Media specialist for Berkeley Lab's K-12 STEM education and outreach team. Our mission is to cultivate the next generation in STEM. So we have a lot of K-12 programs like these STEM career talks, as well as internships, family STEM nights, and more. As a reminder to everyone, this session is being recorded. So we'll be uploading this recording to our website along with our other STEM career talks, so you can view them at a later time. Oops. For a little bit of background on Berkeley Lab, if you haven't heard of us, we are one of 17 Department of Energy national laboratories, and we're located in Berkeley, California. For the past 90 years, we've been recognized for our leadership and innovation in team science, and we've been accredited with 14 Nobel Prizes and the discovery of 16 elements on the periodic table. This year, we're celebrating our 90th anniversary. So if you go to Berkeley Lab next90.lbl.gov, you can see more videos or articles about science at Berkeley Lab as we celebrate the past and imagine the future throughout this year. So this talk today will be the first in our series of spring STEM career talks. Last year, we've had a number of other career talks with different topics, and you can check out the website and look at recordings and themes from previous talks, such as quantum science or travel and fieldwork. This year, we have a brand new lineup of talks. So we're starting with mentor-mentee relationships today. And in 2 weeks, on Thursday at 2 p.m., we'll be talking about the future of food, and 2 weeks later, entrepreneurship and tech. We're scheduling more career talks to continue through May of this year. So you can keep checking our Eventbrite or our website for updates on who our speakers will be on those career talks. So today's talk is about mentor-mentee relationships. In our communications with other scientists, they often mention that professional mentors like teachers, professors, or other educational professionals are really essential to success in STEM. So today we're speaking with two pairs of mentors and mentees who've worked in internships at Berkeley Lab to learn about how we can best support next generation of scientists through internships or mentorship programs outside of internships. So to start with, I'd like to welcome Dula Parkinson, a scientist at the Advanced Light Source here at Berkeley Lab. And Dula, if you could unmute yourself, turn on your camera and introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm Dula Parkinson, and I work at the Advanced Light Source. It's this domed building that produces extremely intense X-rays. I wanted to tell you a tiny bit about me. So when in high school and college, I was huge into running. I ran cross country and track. So in the middle, you see a picture of me out of breath when I ran for BYU. And then I majored in chemistry. And then after graduating, I came to UC Berkeley for grad school, and I did a PhD in chemistry. And then I've been working at Berkeley Lab ever since. And then over on the left, you can see my family. We like to hike and be outside. All right, you can go to the next one. Okay, so I wanted to show you this video that sort of sums up some of the research that I work on as a scientist at Berkeley Lab. So I use X-rays to do 3D imaging, and we image things a lot of the time as they're being, as structures are being modified, and we're able to use the X-rays to see inside of the 3D structures. So the top left is a piece of a jet engine. It's a small piece, and it's made out of ceramics, and we've heated it up to over 1,000 degrees, and we're pulling it apart. And then we are able to make computer models of how it fails, so we can make stronger materials. On the top right, it's some shale rock, where you get, people do fracking with shale rocks. On the bottom left, it's a piece of a heat shield, the same kind of heat shield that's used for the Mars lander that hopefully you guys were paying attention to. And on the bottom right, it's a piece of a grapevine stem where we're studying drought resistance of grapevines. So that gives you some sense of the kinds of different things that we study, just all kinds of different materials. And I think that might be all for me.
Great, thank you so much, Dula. We'll definitely be talking a little bit more about your science and how you're able to have interns work on some of these projects. So next up, I'd like to welcome Sam. Sam, if you could turn on your camera, unmute, and introduce yourself.
All right. Hi, my name is Sam. I'm a current sophomore at UCSD, and I'm studying data science. And I'm currently working in a lab where we apply data science algorithms to solve neuroscience problems. So if we could go to the next slide. So in the spring of my 10th grade year, through my middle school science teacher, I proposed a project on how to use virtual reality to visualize 3D data produced at the advanced light source to doula. And we previously did a project with him earlier, but that's how I know him. But he accepted this project, and over the course of my summers of 10th and 11th grade, I built 2 iterations of this project. So through those internships, I explored like more of my interests and found that I really enjoyed building software that processed or analyzed large data sets. So Doula helped take what I was interested in and place it into a project where I could do real work, but also grow my skills. So that he helped select a project for the next summer where I worked on analyzing data from NASA about how heat shields decay when exposed to extreme heat. It's that same heat shield that he showed in his presentation. One of the most valuable things I got out of the project that year was more of appreciation of a value of a poster that summarizes your work and that you can easily show to future people you want to work with. And this was mainly due to the advice mentoring of Doula. So I made a poster showcasing my summer project with Doula's help, and I showed it to a professor at UCSD, Professor Mishna. And this gave her an easy way to like understand my previous work and like highlight what I've done so far. So I've worked in her lab for the past year, building algorithms and software to help scientists analyze brain imaging data. And incidentally, this data is actually super similar to the data produced at the advanced light source. My end goal is to get a PhD in something related to data science, but I'm unsure about the exact field yet. All right, can we go to the next slide? Awesome. Yeah. So I had 3 main projects over my time at the advanced light source. So my first project was using virtual reality to visualize 3D microscale data. So previously, scientists mainly interact with their data through a 2D computer screen. So this inherently like limits how scientists can interact with their data. So virtual reality allows scientists to see their data in full 3D and just play around with it and step inside of it. So this allows them to gain like new perspectives on their data. So over the course of 2 summers, I built 2 different iterations of this project. So the first summer iteration, it worked, but it took like significant processing to load the data in. And this was fine for like displaying specific data sets. But one thing Doula helped me realize was that for scientists to actually use the software in their own work, it needed to be extremely easy to use. So the next summer, I came back and we iterated on the original concept, making it so the data could be loaded nearly instantaneously and adding a nice GUI for scientists to use. So my next project was to 3D scan parts of the advanced light source. I wanted to include this project because it doesn't require any science or any engineering background. It was purely about just like communication and just like emailing a bunch of people and getting like a bunch of parts to come together. So I worked with the survey and alignment group at LBNL to purchase a new 3D scanner that made it really easy to create large interactive 3D models of buildings. So we wanted to 3D scan parts of the advanced light source because normally you can't access them since they produce high energy X-rays. So you would die in like an instant if you were in them while the advanced light source was running. So by scanning parts of the advanced light source, it allowed the general public to see parts that they couldn't normally visit in person. So in the picture right here, it's of the booster ring. It's where the it's just one part of the advanced light source. My final project in my summer of my 12th grade, it was my favorite. And I felt like, yeah, we studied how heat shields decay when exposed to different temperatures and atmospheric pressures. So the goal was to match current simulations with our experimental data to validate the simulations for the conditions we can produce in the laboratory. And this would give us more confidence that the simulations would be correct for the extreme conditions that spacecraft go through when re-entering the atmosphere that are very hard to replicate in laboratory settings. So for this project, I really enjoyed it because we had such a large data set to work with, and I got to work with 2 other great interns to build machine learning models and figure out how to parallelize them and run them on the data sets efficiently. Yeah, I think that's all for now. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Sam. It's definitely cool to see how you built on your projects and then started something new the next year, and then were able to work with a new professor based on your previous work. So our next set of mentor and mentee will be from the biosciences side of Berkeley Lab. So I'm going to start with introducing Steven Singer.
So hi, I'm Steve Singer. I'm a senior scientist in the Biological Systems and Engineering Division at the laboratory, and I also work at the Joint Bioenergy Institute. Can you go to the next slide? So yeah, so my career trajectory, I'm from New York City. I'm from the East Coast, and I went to college at Williams College, which is a small college in Massachusetts. And as you can see by the pictures, I studied organic and inorganic compounds. And I also did that. I moved to University of Madison, Wisconsin. I got my PhD in organic chemistry, studying similar kinds of compounds. However, I moved out to the Bay Area and I worked at Cal. And I started moving from looking at chemistry to looking at biology. And I started off with looking at, in my postdoctoral work, at proteins that microbes make. And finally, I moved to Lawrence Livermore National Lab for a few years, and that we performed a really interesting project where we looked at this. We looked at an old mine that had really acidic water. And in that acidic water lived a number of bacteria and fungi that could deal with that really difficult system to live with. And one of the most interesting things about it is we could study that system in its native environment. And though this was a really extreme environment, the techniques we developed in this project would eventually be used to study things like the gut microbiome and things that everyone is familiar with now. So I think if you can go to the next slide. So I took all those experience studying chemistry, studying biochemistry, and also studying microbiology. And I really was very fortunate I got to combine them when I came to Lawrence Berkeley National Lab 11 years ago, because I started working at the Joint Bioenergy Institute, which is a picture on the top there. It's in Emeryville, and it's a place where about 200 of us are studying the conversion of plant biomass to biofuels and bioproducts. So we basically want to replace what we get from petroleum today. Tomorrow, we're going to take plants and convert them into the type of molecules that we can put in our car, or we can put in the plastics and other materials that are the basis of our daily lives. And so there are a couple of components I show here is that we take the plant biomass is really complicated, and we have to use chemicals to break it down into its constituent parts. And then we use enzymes to break those constituent parts down to things like sugars and other molecules that microorganisms can convert to these biofuels and bioproducts. So in the process of doing this, and I've done many aspects as a researcher, one in particular is fungi are really useful in breaking down the constituent parts of plants to the individual components like sugars. And so we've studied this organism. This is not actually a pizza. This is an organism that grows at high temperature called Thermoascus or Antiochus. And this really produces a lot of enzymes that are really good at breaking down the parts of the plant biomass to sugars. So, and that's actually what Pallas, I think, is going to talk about. So I think I'm done.
Great, thank you so much, Steve. And yeah, as you mentioned, Pallas, our final panelist, will be talking about her internship experience at JBay.
Hi, I'm super excited to be here. I'm Pallas, and I'm a sophomore studying molecular and cellular biology with a secondary in government at Harvard. So government and bio are where my interests primarily lie. Cool. So here are some like bullets of my career goals and as well as my trajectory. So I attended Fremont Unified School District from K to 12 and super proud FUSD alum. And then the summer after my junior year and the summer after my senior year, I was fortunate enough to work at Lawrence Berkeley with Steven Singer, who you just heard from. Currently, I am doing research on biosynthetic pathways in a chemical biology lab here at Harvard. It's the Balskis lab. What biosynthetic pathways are, it's basically just like a pathway to make a molecule. So right now, I'm just trying to figure out how different enzymes are able to work together to build a new molecule, such as an antibiotic. So that is what I'm doing research on right now. I'm also hoping to get a PhD in the biological or chemical sciences. And my long-term goal is to do something that combines like science policy and research and mentorship and like having a lab and fostering growth in people. And so as of now, my goal is to be in academia with a goal of being a research professor that helps with science policy advising, but that also might change. Cool. Yeah. And as Stephen was talking about prior, the summer after my junior year and the summer after my senior year, I was able to work on this project called on thermoascus. And thermoascus is a super cool fungus because it's able to create these enzymes that are able to withstand high temperatures. And so enzymes are basically these proteins that are able to do super specific functions, like Steve mentioned, break down like plant matter in our case. And so this has applications within the biofuel industry because if you have enzymes that can withstand high temperatures, that can help in industrial processes. The problem with like thermoascus though is that we wanted to make more enzymes and enzymes with higher activity. And so that was my goal throughout my 2 summers. I worked with some graduate students to try to genetically alter the fungus thermoascus for increased enzymatic activity. There was like previously not really a super established way to genetically alter thermoascus. And so that was like the goal of my first summer, like finding a way to allow us to genetically alter it. And so we were able to create a protocol to genetically alter thermoascus and then overexpress some positive regulators that make more enzymes during my junior year. And then the summer after my senior year, the goal was to get rid of the stuff that makes it stop making enzymes. And so we were able to use CRISPR, which is like this technology that is commonly used in genetic engineering. So we were able to use CRISPR to knock out a negative regulator in order to make it make more enzymes. And so basically, sort of as an overview, first summer, try to overexpress positive regulators, make it make more enzymes. And then the second summer was to get rid of the stuff that makes it stop making enzymes. So that is an overview of my research project. Yeah.
Great, thank you so much, Palace, for that introduction. And finally, before we get to our Q&A portion of this STEM Career Talk, I'd like to introduce my co-host, Elisa.
Thanks, Edith. Hi, everyone. My name is Elisa Vitale, and I'm the Content Instruction Coordinator for the K-12 team here at Berkeley Lab. So I will be monitoring the chat box today. And if anyone has any questions for the panelists, please type them in and I'll make sure the panelists get to them. We also have some questions that we received beforehand through the Eventbrite. So at this time, I would like to ask everyone to turn back their cameras on and we can get our Q&A portion started. Thank you. Great. Okay, so there's a lot of questions coming in through the Eventbrite about how do you find mentorship opportunities? Are there any tips that you can share? What advice do you have in reaching out to scientists? So I will bring this question first to Sam. You mentioned about proposing your project to doula through a teacher. And I wonder if you can shed some more light about how you got to work with doula.
Yeah, so in 7th grade, my middle school science teacher took us on a class trip up to the advanced light source. So I knew I was like somewhat familiar with what their data was and like what they were trying to do up there. Then I kept in contact with my middle school science teacher. She's been like a mentor for me for all these years. And she kept in contact with doula. So I asked her, and through her, I emailed doula about proposing this new project that I built like a prototype with, just using like the basic, like using like a phone VR solution. And then when I got to the ALS that summer, we used more advanced VR solutions that were harder to access. I guess another thing I would say is after COVID, in COVID, everything is different. But one of the other ways I met my current mentor at UCSD was we had like a data science orientation, and they had all these professors just come up and speak, and afterwards you could like mingle with them. So I went up to a bunch of them and I found one that was that had research that was interesting to me, and I just started talking with her and asked her if I could get coffee with her in the future. Then I got coffee with her and asked to intern with her, and that's yeah.
Awesome, thanks for sharing. Palace, I'll bring that same question to you. You mentioned that you worked with Steve in your high school as well, but how did that come about?
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough to talk to the Associate Director of Biosciences, Mary Maxton, who is such a wonderful person and a huge inspiration. But I initially reached out to her my junior year because I was inviting for her for an event, and sort of like got familiar with her work and what she does through that front. She works a lot with like policy, but also the biosciences. So that was something that I was super interested in. And then when I was looking to find an opportunity for the summer, I thought about her and her division, because as a child, I always went to like, I always like read about like the amazing Lawrence Berkeley scientists, and I was like, wow, I want to be one of them one day too. And so I kind of just communicated that to her through email, and asked if she could recommend anybody or any divisions. And she was very nice and like connected me with like Blake Simmons, who is like one of the division leaders, as well as Steve Singer. And so we were able to find projects through that. And I'm like extremely fortunate for this, because they were really caring about like what I wanted to get out of it too, in terms of like asking me what my interests were. And yeah, and so that was just a really great process. I think overall and general advice is like clearly communicating to the people you're reaching out to why you want to be in their lab, and specifically what research interests they have that might align with yours is something I would highly recommend. Now that I'm in college, I did a similar process when I was trying to find a new research lab here, and wrote emails detailing like some of people's like past work and like how I feel like I can fit into that picture, and why their interests like align with my interests. So I think clearly communicating how your interests align with whatever lab you're looking for is really great. But also I was very lucky to talk to amazing people. Yeah.
Thank you, Palace, for sharing that. It seems like Sam and Palace, you guys really reached out with email. So I just sort of want to follow up with that. Like, are there any tips? And I might actually pass this to the mentors. So on the mentor side, what sort of emails might stand out to you? Doula, perhaps, do you want to speak to that?
Well, so, I mean, I think like everybody gets a lot of emails in general, but it's actually not like I get a lot of emails of high school students interested in internship, or really anybody interested in an internship. You know, I would say in the last 2 years, I've gotten one email from just someone reaching out to me who's a high school student interested in an internship. So when I get those emails, I'm like, whoa, someone like really looked me up, and like it's almost like flattering that someone would think that like I would be doing something interesting enough that they'd want to do that too. So I don't know, I mean, yeah, it just doesn't happen very often. So it's sort of fun for me when it does happen.
Yeah, and I'll follow up. So I did internships in high school, and so definitely have a soft spot for having high school students in my laboratory. But it's often, it's often hard to get people interested, especially in high school. I have had another high school student as well as Palace in my laboratory, but I think people shouldn't hesitate if they see a scientist that they find really interesting, just to email them, because I think, we may be able to offer you an internship, but we will definitely talk to you, because we really want to talk to people about our science, and we want to educate the next generation of scientists. So we are there, and we will talk. We will respond to you. So I've actually had high school students email me and ask me questions about, like, they're writing a paper on a subject, and they find my name on the LBNL website, and they'll contact me and ask me a question. I have no problem answering them or setting up a Zoom call with them.
Yeah, definitely. And that kind of leads into one of our other submitted questions about mentorship outside of internships. So some people have asked, how can you talk to mentors, or how can you get help without doing a formal internship? Maybe it's not the summer, you don't have all the time, to work full time in a lab. What are some ways that mentors and mentees can work with each other during the regular school year or work year outside of doing a project together? So maybe for all of you, like, how do you keep in touch with mentors and mentees outside of the internship? Or, going back to that question of, like, what can students ask you as a mentor, just like a cold email of, like, hey, I have a question about this that I'm interested in. So I'd like to bring that question back to Dula, maybe.
Sure. Well, I mean, I can use the example of Sam. Like, I think I've maybe reached out to Sam more than he's reached out to me, because as we've tried to, like, finish the publication on the project that he worked on, I keep, like, running into things where I'm like, oh, Sam, I need your help on something. So I'll reach out to him. So I'm hoping that because I'm bothering him so much, that he feels comfortable reaching out to me whenever he needs me. In general, one of the main points of time at which people reach back out to me is when they need letters of recommendation. So I've had people who reach out for a letter of recommendation for college, and then again for grad school. And so, and those are times when we talk about, like, what are their choices, where are they going? And so those are, but I always love hearing back from the people that have worked for me before. It's really fun to find out where they're going. So I'm always, excited to talk to people.
Yeah, definitely a lot of opportunities to keep in touch. And then Sam, if you wanted to add anything to that, like, do you have any burning questions to bring up to Dula in the middle of the school year when you're working on your research?
I guess, like, advice in, like, terms of, like, how to, like, if I have a goal of going to get a PhD in something related to data science. So, like, what do I need to do to, like, get to that point, is something, like, Dula's helped me find. And then also, like, future job opportunities. Like, it's not like I emailed him a couple months ago for a job for this, like, asking him if he has any cool projects for this summer. And that was very helpful. So I hopefully am going to work for him again, which should be fun.
Yeah, and then Palace, what are some ways you and Steve keep in contact outside of your internship after completing your internships?
Yeah, for sure. So actually, when I was trying to find a lab here and was deciding between two, I asked Steve for his input to try to get his perspective. So he was a really valuable resource in that front. I also Steve's a cool guy, and so like when I go back to the Bay Area, sometimes we would connect over lunch or just things like that. But in general, I think that speaks to the volumes in terms of the approachability of Steve, as well as the other leadership within LBNL. They're super approachable, and so makes me feel comfortable asking them questions. And yeah, sometimes I have casual questions and I just email Steve.
Yeah, I think people should realize that we're very invested in the future of the people that work for us, and we definitely want to see them succeed, from high school students to, for example, people already have PhDs that work for us. So, we're happy to help people all along the pathway of their of their career trajectory. I mean, well, people need recommendation letters throughout their career, actually, in research science. So it's always good to keep in contact with the people, even the people that you started off with doing research when you were in high school or in college.
And if I may add on, I think the question was also addressing like informal mentorship outside of research opportunities. And I wanted to emphasize that there are lots of people who are willing to answer questions, like even if you didn't formally work on a research project with them. And like a lot of times people don't reply, and that's okay. You can follow up, and even if they don't reply, like that's not speaking to like yourself. That's just like some people are super busy. And so just like being persistent and reaching out to people that you think would be valuable is really important.
Thank you for all that good advice, everyone. And so Steve kind of mentioned about career trajectories. That's sort of the next question I have for the mentees about how your mentor shaped your career trajectory. I think the one thing that really stood out is that both of you started, doing these internships in high school, which are amazing opportunities. And so going back to Palace, you said you worked with Steve for 2 years, the summer after 11th and 12th grade. How did that internship shape, and how has your mentor shaped your career trajectory, whether that be the college, the research, or your goals beyond?
Yeah, I think on a surface level, doing research shows you if you are interested in research, and this research opportunity has shown me that I do want to be a research scientist, and I do want to do research in the biological and chemical sciences. But I think on a more fundamental level, there's a lot of like social aspects of lab work and lab culture as a whole. And I think Lawrence Berkeley has done an amazing job in terms of like encouraging me to ask questions, being able to point out when I do things wrong, but in a gracious way, being able to like inspire me and communicate and open opportunities for me that I would not have imagined otherwise. And I think more fundamental than I want to do bio and chem research, like this opportunity has shown me that I want to do something where I can in turn open opportunities for others. And that's why like currently I want to do academia or some realm in which I can also have a lab and allow like other high schoolers in the future to come into my lab. Or I guess like as a fundamental thing too, just when people ask me questions, or when people ask me questions, just being nice and like taking the time to do that, I think has also just like fundamentally shaped me as a person. So yes, I want to do chemical and biological sciences, but this has also just shown me how much I want to do stuff that will inspire the next generation of scientists also.
That's awesome, paying it forward. And Sam, same question to you. I mean, again, you've worked with Duo since high school. Actually, you've been involved with ALS since middle school, I guess, mentioned middle school teacher. How has all of that shaped your career trajectory?
So I guess one of the really like working at LBNL like shows you like all the different things you could potentially be in your future. So like working in Dula's group, I gotta like eat lunch with just a bunch of different people at different stages in the career, from like postdocs to grad students to like research scientists every day, and I get to talk to them about like their research and what they're passionate about and stuff like that. So that helped me figure out like, oh, I really do want to do research, and I really do like working in a collaborative environment where there are people of different experiences, and you can talk to everybody and they're all very responsive to questions and like helping you out. I think it also helped me, it also changed my career trajectory as I found out I really love just analyzing data, and I really like working with like larger data sets and getting into the big data movement, because at LBNL, they have such great computational resources that I gotta use computer systems that I like just dream of using in a way. Like I very much just love trying to figure out how can we get code to scale and stuff like that. So it helped me like find that passion that I couldn't have found unless I like had access to these systems. So that was another big benefit.
Yeah, and it's definitely like always changing. Like once you meet more people and you work with more people, your career trajectory could still be changing. My next question is more focused towards the mentor. So we just learned about what the students can gain from an internship early in their career. As a mentor, what do you also gain? What do you learn from your students as a mentor, like working in a new professional relationship? What have you learned over the years as a mentor? So I'll start with Steve.
Yeah, so I think one thing you learn in general is how to, how to communicate science to people at many different levels. Because if you're dealing with high school students, college students, master students, or PhD students, throughout people who are being trained, you have to communicate science differently. So, I think you start off trying to communicate science at the highest level possible, and that usually, that doesn't work for everyone. So you have to learn to modulate how you communicate. I think the other thing you learn is how to figure out how the person will work best in lab, because I don't work a lot in lab anymore. So I have my group that actually works in lab. So when I get an intern, I have to think about that, the intern's background, the intern's interests, and also the people in my group, and who's going to be paired best with that intern, to actually train them and actually give them a good experience. I think so. I think Palace was fortunate on the project she was on. I had a number of graduate students who are working on the project who are very well trained and also very good at training people. So she really benefited from that. I would say in particular with Palace is fearless. Palace will go up to anyone and ask a question. And I'm not fearless. I'm sometimes not comfortable with going up to people. So in particular, Palace is just much more fearless than I am. And that's something I can learn from.
Yeah, definitely a great learning experience in science communication, which is a super valuable skill. And Dula, what do you learn from interns over the years?
Yeah, sure. So I think that, when I first had interns, that was like my first experience sort of like being someone's manager, so to speak, even though, so being someone's supervisor, a little for an internships, maybe a little different than other scenarios. But so I had to learn how to, give direction to someone, how to communicate a project to someone, because especially for a lot of the internships here, they're not 5-year internships. Sam and Palace like have had a few years, but like a lot of the interns are only here for 8 weeks. And so for me, it's actually a chance to like, sometimes in my day-to-day job, I'm involved in so many things, and you get busy and you're just like doing things, and you don't sometimes like you lose track of thinking about like the science and the really cool projects that you have. And so having the interns is actually like a really fun opportunity to think about what are the cool things that I'm doing, and what's like a piece of that sort of bigger picture that I'm doing that like an intern, I could actually like help an intern understand what I'm doing, and in 8 weeks, help them learn something and then get up to speed and accomplish something and really contribute to the project. And so it's a little bit of a challenge to figure that out, but it's also really fun. And then what the interns always bring is so much enthusiasm. Like pretty much every intern I've ever had, they bring so much enthusiasm, and that is really, it really helps, because sometimes, like I say, you just get down into the like just doing, being busy and doing all this stuff. So having that enthusiasm, someone who hasn't like, hasn't lost any enthusiasm for science yet, it's so great to have them there with you.
Thanks, Dula. It's nice having a fresh perspective coming into your research. My next question is sort of about perspectives. Like, was there anything unexpected that either mentors or mentees had when working? Were there any skills, perspectives that you didn't really expect you were going to get for internship and you ended up gaining? So swing this back to the mentees, starting with Sam. Anything unexpected from your internship experience?
So one thing that I felt like really kept getting hammered every year was like how important presenting your work is and communicating it with other people. And I feel like Dula's really helped me like figure out like how to make a good scientific presentation for different groups, and thinking about like who am I presenting this to? And like, why am I making this presentation? Why am I making this poster? So I feel like it's important that I didn't really expect to have that part of myself be or grow from these internships. I expected it to really just advance my technical skills, but it really helped show me how important and how to create better presentations for the future.
Thanks, Sam. It's definitely a great skill to have. How about you, Palace? Anything unexpected?
Yeah, I guess I want to echo what Sam said in terms of how like fostering soft skills was something that was kind of unexpected, but I realized was super important. For example, Steve has like group meetings. And so being able to talk at these group meetings, ask questions at these group meetings, have like furthered my skills as a scientist and being able to critically think about other people's research within the group also. And also there's so much like plethora of knowledge available at Lawrence Berkeley. Like I've like eaten lunch with like so many cool like people within the building and just like postdocs and grad students and whatnot. And you're like, wow, what are you doing your research on? And my strategy, pro tip, first couple of weeks, bring microwave food because you have an excuse to like go to the kitchen and like while you're microwaving your food, you can talk to the people around you in the kitchen. So pro tip, bring microwave food because that's just a good like 2-minute like elevator like talking conversation excuse. But yeah, like just the amount of knowledge I can benefit even outside of my research project was unexpected. And yeah, I think also just like the amount of investment people had in me was also unexpected. I think, yeah, like the grad students were really supportive, as was Stephen, as well as like a bunch of other scientists within the lab. So really amazing people.
It's awesome that you got to foster sort of connections with various people that you didn't expect. And to the mentors, Steve, anything that was unexpected in working with your mentee or from the internship?
No, I think it's hard to conceive at the start how much people will do because Palace was only actually worked in lab, I think, for probably 12 weeks in total, but was able to get data that eventually went into a paper that we just published about 3 or 4 months ago. So it's always you always want to temper your expectations, but people surprise you and exceed your expectations, and I think that's important. It's important to like to set reasonable expectations for people, but also to expect things that you won't, that things will work out in ways you didn't imagine, and that's one of the best things about scientific research. So I will say that a lot of scientific research doesn't work. Palace is very skilled, but also was very lucky because so it's important to understand that a lot of things don't work, but even things that don't work are important because that tells us where not to go and to look in another direction to make something work.
Fun fact, we were growing fungus on like PDA, which is like potato dextrose agar. And like for some reason, like one of our batches just wouldn't grow as well. And apparently we are hypothesizing that they changed the potatoes. But yeah, those things do happen.
Right, there's a lot that goes on into research that might be unexpected, that's for sure. And finally, Dula, was there anything unexpected in your experience with internships working with mentees?
I mean, one of the things that was really fun and unexpected for me was times when my interns started to make connections with other people. So a few of my interns are very shy, and so they'll come in and basically I'm the only one they talk to, and they just sit at their computer or sit at their workbench and sort of do their thing. But most of my interns, including Sam, it was really fun when like one of my colleagues would come up to me in the hall and I'm like, oh, I had a good chat with Sam today. I'm like, oh, why are you talking to Sam? So it's just like really great though to see, when I found my interns working with each other, or when they were just like branching out and making connections throughout the lab, because I think that's really what Berkeley Lab is all about. Is team science, is people working together, people talking together. And so when I saw just people taking the initiative and doing that, it was a little bit of a surprise, but also like really great to see.
Great, thank you. And I have another question for the mentors from the chat. Do you have any advice on how to pursue an internship if you don't know exactly what field you might be interested in, or if you might be interested in multiple fields? So I know, like Palace, you mentioned like you wanted to go into biology and you had kind of an idea. What advice would you give Steve and Dula for people who really have no idea what kind of STEM field that they could pursue in the future?
I mean, I don't think you would, like, I'm still not sure what exactly like niche biological realm I'm going to explore in the future. And how you find out in terms of like what research you're interested in is to do the research. And so just like starting off somewhere and being part of that experience and like reflecting afterwards and asking yourself like if you like that experience and if you like that subject is like super important. So I guess like I still don't fully know what I'm interested in terms of like the nitty gritty, but like I know like which aspects of my experience that I enjoyed and which aspects I want to continue. And so just starting somewhere is really cool. And also your research project doesn't have to encompass like all of your different interests. Like for example, I mentioned that I'm really interested in government, which is like something completely different from biology. But I'm able to pursue like my interest in government through other fronts. Like I was heavily involved in student government within high school, and then now I'm in student government in Harvard. And so just like pursuing your different interests through different realms is also really valuable. And also just talking to people that you might encounter throughout your experience. There were people that I like benefited a lot from gaining their expertise in within my research internship that I'm like super fortunate, but that doesn't have to like encompass like everything that you're ever interested in, but you should start somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely just getting your foot in the door, and then from then it could be trial and error before you figure out what niche you're interested in. And Steve, did you want to add on anything on that end of like helping Palace explore those different niche fields in biology?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure like you have to commit to anything when you start. I think if something even interests you just a little, then I think if you want to, learn what it's like to be in lab, then you should pursue it, because I think that experience will allow you to sort of build and understand what you really want to do. And there's no better way to figure out what you want to do than by doing it. And so you can either, let's say you want to do lab, you think you want to do lab work, and you say, okay, I'll do lab work on biology. And then you get into lab and you say, this is not fun, but the computational part would be really interesting. Maybe I should learn about computers. So you kind of, I don't know, you kind of build towards where you're going to go. But I think it's important to start somewhere, even if there's a spark of your interest, and you should pursue that. I mean, you should find someone on the lab website and write to them and ask if there's an opportunity for an internship.
Thank you, Steve. And actually, I will follow up with this. First of all, thank you everyone for putting in questions into the chat box. A lot of good ones are coming in. And we've got a very timely one about COVID, as we are currently experiencing. And we had an audience member asking perhaps towards mentors, though mentees, if you have any advice to share as well, feel free to jump in. The question is, how do you think it'll be different for high schoolers reaching out for mentorships and internships for the summer with COVID? So due to COVID, how do you think things might be different?
So things have been different over the last year. So we aren't able to have any high school or college students in the laboratory working because of social distancing restrictions. So I'm not sure how. I think it will continue this summer, and so I think the internships that you might you might ask for are either research internships where you do some sort of research about a particular topic, or if you're interested in computational methods, there's a possibility that you can do computational methods from your home. So I think starting in the fall, we'll be able to, hopefully, we'll be able to get interns back into the laboratory.
Thank you, Steve. And I'll pass this question on to Dula as well. I think you're taking part in our Experiences Research Internship program as well. But do you have any advice in general for reaching out for mentorships, internships during COVID?
Sure. So, I mean, I've had interns both through like the official lab programs that you can apply for, as well as sort of directly, hiring the interns in our division. And so definitely, I think, I mean, I should leave it to you, to Elisa and Edith to talk about the official programs that you have. And I am actually participating as a mentor, I think, this summer in one of those programs, that one of the official programs. My division hasn't decided yet whether we're going to host any high school or interns outside of the official program, just because all of the projects we would do this summer would have to be remote. And in past years, we actually have had some interns who, like last summer, we had some interns who were all remote, but they were all people who had been here before. What we found is like it's hard to train people and help people learn all the things they need to know to successfully do an internship when they're completely doing it from home, and you're not able to sort of spend as much time with them. Because for a lot of the projects that people have done with me, like the high school students, they don't come in, with all the expertise they need to do the project. Part of what they do is in the first few weeks learn some skills that they will then apply to be able to sort of do the analysis or do the work that they're supposed to do. And it's just harder to do that training right now. So for my division, we might be only doing for high school students the internships that are through the official programs.
And turning this question back to the students, on building off of what Dula said, what are some ways that you can prepare for an internship? What can you learn or work on beforehand so that you can have a strong application? So Sam, if you have any advice on what people can do before an internship.
Definitely, I would, if you're interning with a specific person, look at like their CV, or like try to figure out like all the papers they've written and pick a couple of them and just read them, just to see like start to familiarize yourself with like what they've worked on before. And don't worry if you like don't actually understand like half the paper. That's totally fine and normal. It's just starting to like read the lingo, and then you can start to, when you start interning with them, you can always ask them questions about like, hey, could you explain this part of the paper to me? And that could help you jumpstart you on your learning.
And Palace, any other advice to gain skills or knowledge before an internship, preparing for an internship?
Yeah, and I guess like first of all, like you're not going to know everything about your internship. Like I'm not like, I don't have a PhD in biology, right? So I'm not going to like already come in knowing like everything and like that. And that's like perfectly okay, as long as you're transparent about that. But in terms of like developing skills beforehand, I like benefited a lot from my coursework in high school, like taking like AP Bio and AP Chem before my internship with Steve, because like my project was very bio and chem related. And so just knowing what was going on was really, really beneficial. I think it's sort of like, yeah, if you have like a strong foundation, I think that just helps you like understand a lot of things more, but that is not 100% required. It depends on which lab you're asking and who you're working with. But in terms of like kind of touching upon the question about COVID, like there are still some like programs available that are like remote research, but even if you aren't involved in any of the programs, I think this is like a really good opportunity for you to read up on things, and to there's a lot of like open courseware courses online, like Harvard X, and a bunch of like just open courseware where you can read about proteins and whatever, and also computational skills. Like I like last summer, my entire summer internship with my lab here was remote, and I had like a very beginner's like computational background, and so I just used that opportunity to brush up on like bioinformatics, learn about bioinformatics, as well as like develop stronger computational skills that I otherwise might not have developed until much later. And so I think in some ways, this is a good opportunity for you to learn about computational skills and bioinformatics and do stuff in regards to that. And so that is just another tool in your toolkit.
Thank you, Pals and Sam, for all that good advice. And thank you again to all the panelists for joining us today. It was great to hear about all your experiences and just a lot of good advice across. And it's just amazing to see these mentor-mentee relationships. It just sounds very supportive on both ends. We earlier, Faith Dukes, Director of K-12 program, popped into the chat for a link to an info session coming up on March 6th. For more info, we will be sharing more information about our Berkeley Lab summer programs for local students, and we will also be going over the application process through that info session. So we highly encourage students, local students who are interested in being part of a summer experience here at Berkeley Lab. Please check out that link and check out that info session.
And that will conclude our STEM career talk for today. If you're interested in more, we'll have more every other Thursday at 2 p.m. Thank you all so much for joining us this afternoon, and have a great day, everyone.